Ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment we're going to begin the funeral services of Mr. Marvin Miller. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome those who are joining us online. For those who are here at the cemetery, please take a moment to be sure that your cell phones have been set to the quiet mode. Officiating is Rabbi David Oler, and he performed the ceremony of Kriya just a few moments ago.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
David has one. He's gonna leave that for you.
I apologize, Kriya is going to be done now, so if I could ask Mr. Miller's 3 children to rise and stand next to your mother as the rabbi says the blessing.
Do I stand up too?
No, say with me. Eloheinu melech haolam, dayan haemet.
And then,
Praise God, the righteous judge, what has given, what has taken away, what we praise his name, let us say, Amen.
If you notice, all the children were on the heart, and Mrs. Mika wears it on the right side.
Change your clothes, you change the ribbon.
This time we're going to.
And then you move the ribbon over to the other clothes.
We have gathered together, sharing our sorrow, to bid farewell to Marvin Miller. We recall the wonderful blessing of his life. We are grateful for the precious memories which shall endure. What though the radiance which was once so bright be now forever taken from my sight? For nothing can bring back the hour of splendor in the grass, of glory in the flower. And grieve not, rather find strength in what remains behind, in the primal sympathy which having been, must ever be, in the soothing thoughts that spring out of human suffering, in the faith that looks through death, in the years that bring the philosophic mind. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear what my life may be, I go and lie down where the wood rake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come to the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. We meet to celebrate the life of Marvin Miller, to express with love how much Marvin meant to us. We meet to support one another, to affirm life, to affirm that Marvin Miller was important to us. We join together to express our love, to share our loss as we celebrate his life together. The love of the human heart is the most real and the most beautiful of all the realities we know. It's the richest gift of our humanness. It is the love that joins us together as lovers, as husband and wife, as parent and child, and as friends and neighbors. Whatever the length of time may be, to have known something of this is to have experienced the supreme privilege of being human. The anguish of parting cannot destroy this most real of all realities. The love has been, the affection has existed, the ties have been woven. Life has been shared, the joys and the sorrows. This has been as real and strong as anything in life. The love that once was born can never die. It has become part of us, of our life, woven into the very texture of our being. Each of us would wish to leave some part of ourselves, yes, every one of us, some memory, some influence for good. So here and now, we bear witness to the one we knew in life, who now in death bequeaths a subtle part, precious and beloved, which will be with us in truth and beauty, in dignity and courage and love to the end of our days. The 23rd Psalm. Mizmor LeDavid Adonai ro'i lo echzar, binodeshe yarbitzeni al mei menuchot nahaleni, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni b'magle tzedek l'man shemo, gam ki ilech b'geit salmovet lo iroro, ki ato imodi, shiftecho u'mish'antecho hema yenachamuni, ta'aroch lefonai shulchan neged sororoi, Bishanto v'Hashemen roshi kosi revoyo, Achtov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, V'shavti b'veit Adonai l'orech yamim. The separateness, the uniqueness of each human life is the basis of our grief and bereavement. Look to the whole world, and there is no one like the one we have lost. But Marvin Miller still lives on in our memories, and though no longer a visible part of our lives, he will always remain a member of this family through the influences that he has had and the special part that he has played in your lives. We join together in the recitation of the 23rd Psalm in these brochures on the second page. We read together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk in the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. You know, I've never made a statement like this before in my entire career, having officiated a couple of funerals. As I listened to the family last night, Mrs. Miller and the children, I said to myself, what a self-actualized man. I have never had people prepare me to provide a eulogy or have heard about a man who was so self-actualized. And I said to myself, I am going to begin this eulogy differently. I'm going to say that for starters. That's just to set the tone. And now for a regular eulogy, having said that. We were excited that Marvin was making progress. They were really helping him. But Sunday he died suddenly, but we're grateful that he died peacefully and didn't suffer more. 68 years. Can you imagine 68 years together in marriage? Sherie and Marvin were married for 68 years. They met during their orientation week at the University of Illinois in Champaign. And they have been inseparable since. They were married 2 years after meeting. Sherie said to me, our relationship with Marvin was so wonderful. I was the luckiest lady in the world, she said. I married my best friend, and we continue being best friends all my life. She went on to say, Marvin continually changed my life in productive ways, and in great ways. Marvin encouraged Sherie's education and her professional development as well. Both Marvin and Sherie worked very hard, and they met with great success as a result. For many years, they worked together professionally. He was in charge of stocks, she was in charge of bonds. They had their respective responsibilities. They didn't have to challenge each other or compete who's going to be better at this or that. They had their separate departments, which I think is an interesting model. And they traveled the world together. They even had a televised weekly program on investments that lasted for 13 years on television. They were blessed with 3 children, Neil, Amy, and Ronald. Marvin was an incredibly supportive and loving father, encouraging and nurturing to each one of them in their own way. He was always present for each of them as they were growing up. When each became married to their respective spouses, Marilyn, Jack, and Suzanne, he welcomed them into the family with open arms, with warmth. He was blessed with 8 grandchildren: Edward, Lisa, Samuel, Melissa, Ellen, Laura, Sarah, and Rachel. He loved each one of them dearly. Eventually, Edward married Ashley, Lisa married Andrew, Melissa married Aaron, and Sarah is soon to marry Michael. He was thrilled and excited to have his family grow in this way. He had great-grandchildren, Nina, Natalie, and Miles. And he was so happy to be with them. In fact, when they came to visit, he tried to ignore his caretakers and ran to greet them. He loved them so much. He was so excited to see them. So happy to be with them. Marvin was interested in everything. He was interested in business, of course, but he was also interested in music, in photography, in making things by himself, in travel, in reading books. He had obviously a very inquiring mind. He wanted to know how the world worked. He made his own telescope, ground his own lenses. He built a model railroad. He loved philosophy. He was self-taught in all these dimensions and became erudite in each. He was very interested in Jewish history, and Judaism was very important to him. I'd like to conclude by saying that Marvin's Hebrew name was Moshe. Moshe, as you know, was Moses in the Torah. He was a redeemer of others. He was the teacher. We call him Moshe Rabbeinu. Moses, our teacher. We'll say Marvin, our teacher. And Marvin, in fact, Marvin will continue to be the teacher of his family and a source of redemptive inspiration as we remember the beautiful memories that he leaves behind. And let us all say, Amen. Neil has some thoughts to share with us.
I just wanted to share how much my father meant to me, and all the love and support that he gave to us, and to continue with what the rabbi said. He gave me my interest in technology and in business, and that he guided my career, guided what became my career for my whole life. And I'll always be thankful for that, and always have a piece of him right here and everywhere. So.
Next is Amy.
I second what he said. But in addition, I thought Dad would live forever. He was almost 88 years old. Cousin Jeff Fox said he was the nicest guy and so smart, and he had a very pleasant, sweet spirit, and yet he was never arrogant. Throughout my life, I would do anything to spend time with my dad, and he knew it. When I was growing up, after working long hours at our clothing store, when Dad got home on many nights, he would heat up a Malnati's pizza. This despite the fact that my mom always made him a beautiful dinner. Mom was always upstairs by 8 p.m., so I got to sit at the kitchen table with him for hours, many times a week. We talked about literally everything. Convertible bonds, preferred stocks, common stocks, the fundamentals of the stock market, the 200-day moving average, the Ben Graham value investing theory, the value lines, the Dow theory signals, and who could forget those leading economic indicators? If there was any time left, we got to talk about what I wanted. But that was still great because I got all the time with my dad. In 1972, he made me read the Federal Reserve Bank Credit Analyst. It was the first time interest rates ever hit 12%. Coincidentally, I was 12 years old. That year, he also made me invest my babysitting money and all my earnings in Commonwealth Edison and IBM. That ultimately paid for the roof on our house, the one that I still live in today. At 13 years old, I was in downtown Chicago one cold February day, and in visiting Dad's brokerage firms, afterward, he made me stand in the bitter cold, freezing to death, and call out almost all of the Dow 30 ticker tape symbols as they went across the moving ticker tape in front of Hornblower, Hemphill, Weeks, and Noise. How could I forget? He wouldn't let me come in until I did so. He made me do this because my brothers refused. So it's not hard to figure out why I got a score in the high 90s on the stock brokerage Series 7 licensing test. Even after the grueling study sessions, what got me through the exam were those kitchen table conversations running through my head during the test. By that time, Dad was well on his way to becoming an incredible stock market tape reader, as he had been studying that for all those years and years. Later, he and my mom were stockbrokers, as you know, and I was too. He told me of the various stocks I should discuss with my clients, like Engelhard, the smokestack cleaner company. He always made me look so good, especially when they got taken over. Later, after marrying my husband Jack, his invaluable advice carried us through all kinds of weather in the law office. He came up with the law is not all black and white. There are always shades of gray, which we used until the end. There was a reason why he was dubbed early, omnipotent one. When grandchildren came, he was always observant and critical as always. He had a way of identifying talent early. He loved to get to know them, especially when, shortly after Mom and Dad retired, Melissa and Ellen came to live with them for a short time each after they graduated college. He knew how to shape up those girls. He taught them problem solving, shared fun stories from his professional career. Both Melissa and Ellen learned quickly how to never get the Marvin Miller look of disapproval. They both loved and adored him. Both Melissa and Ellen made a point of commenting in how in recent years, as he grew older, he loved holding both their hands, and they loved holding his hands. They both cherished his love. He knew how to make us all feel loved. We are so blessed. Our dad was a wonderful father who was so invested in the success in his 3 children and his 8 grandchildren. He gave enormous deep thought in how to best aid in bettering all of our lives. He, together with our mother, set a wonderful example of how to build successful lives and build a future filled with deep love and affection. We've been so fortunate not only to have both of our parents, but to have them both for so long.
Ron?
I echo what they both said. My dad was an exceptional person who leaves a profound legacy on his children, grandchildren, friends, and family. I think of their life in 3 acts. Act 1, working at the family clothing store on State Street in downtown Chicago and raising a young family. It wasn't always easy being part of a family business. And in addition to raising 3 small children, having to work long days and weekends, he navigated changing fashions, technology, and demographics. I have special memories of working in the filing room in the store. I think I was 9 years old, and hand stamping out Burton Miller credit cards. I will also never forget what add-on interest is. I know the store had a similar profound impact on Amy and Neil, who worked there a lot more than I did. Act 2, Paine Webber and then UBS. In the early 1980s, with what must have been a ton of courage, my dad decided to sell his interest in the store to his brother, and in his late 40s, he turned his hobby, the stock market, into his vocation. Then a couple years later, even convinced my mom to join the new family business. His second act proved to be better than the first. He shared his investing knowledge in the classroom, on TV. He and my mom built trust with one client at a time. The business they built, is a tribute to his character, his talent, and his perseverance. At the core, my dad was an entrepreneur. He believed that with hard work and integrity, he and we could achieve anything. His entrepreneurship rubbed off on each of us, whether it was Amy trading stocks, selling chemicals, paint saver, or Neil pursuing his independent IT consulting business. We were schooled in entrepreneurship. When I got a job offer after college at a bank, I was actually somewhat embarrassed to take a job at a big company. Nobody we knew worked at big companies. I thought everyone worked for themselves, unless they were a doctor, a lawyer, or an actuary. He was extremely, as we've talked, curious. And I think the rabbi covered a lot of what all of his various interests were. He was also on the cutting edge of new technology, whether it was a microwave, a calculator, a VCR, or a computer. He wanted it, and if one was good enough, 10 were better. Act 3. My dad worked hard, but also understood that life is to be enjoyed. And after we were grown, and my mom achieved their success as stockbrokers, they traveled to China, Israel, Russia, Europe, just to name a few. Then, after they retired, they spent more than a decade and enjoyed lectures, staying current on politics, reading Barron's. It didn't, let up. As my mom said, he helped with the big decisions and rarely got anything wrong. In fact, we often called him Marvin the Truth Miller. Whether we liked it or not, my dad always had an opinion, and he was often correct. It's a tribute to my mom and dad that their children and grandchildren call them multiple times a week, sometimes multiple times a day. We call them not because we have to, but because we want to share our successes and challenges with my dad, and appreciate his support and advice as we navigate life. He was proud of each of his children, grandchildren, and grandchildren. Even as my dad's mental functioning deteriorated, he still showed his interest in life and the world around him. He loved listening to Kramer on CNBC, reading Barron's, and watching political talk shows until the very end. He truly had a photographic memory for every stock ticker and symbol. Even when we visited him in memory care, he could still quote stock prices. Crazy how the mind works. My dad always talked about stocks, as Amy and Neil said, and Amy referred to IBM. One of his first gifts to us was a framed stock certificate of IBM. But I saw that it said IBM. Before that, I had totally thought IBM stood for Izzy, Buzzy, and Max, which is what he told us it was. And it really confused me when it said International Business Machine Corp. But we all prized those shares of IBM, which we had framed on our walls. Dad, you were one of a kind. You will always live large in our hearts and minds. You taught us we could achieve anything in life if we married a wonderful spouse, worked hard, and treated people fairly. You didn't always say it, but we all know how much you loved each and every one of us. We love you.
As the rabbi continues due to the rain, we're laying his casket and placing the cover of the Bible.
ויושב עפר על הארץ כשהיה, והרוח תשוב אל אלוהים אשר נתנה. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns unto God who gave it. May the soul of Marvin Miller, Moshe ben Avraham Velino, be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. Send comfort, O Lord, for those who mourn. Grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow. O merciful Father, our refuge and Redeemer. The evening twilight fades away. The stars, invisible by day, shine forth against the darkness of the night. So too at death of one whom we love, in the darkness of our sorrow, the light of his light shines forth clear and bright, warm, radiant, and steadfast, lighting our way, lifting our spirit and our courage, a memory, an influence, and a presence to be treasured to the end of time. This earth is from the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. Please stand. El molei rachamim, shochei b'meromim, ametzei menucha nechona, tachat kanafei hashechino, b'ma'alot kerushim u'tehorim, kezor rakiam azhirim, et nishmat Moshe ben Avraham Velina sholach li'olamo, Vegan Eden Hemruchoto, Ono Barachamim, Asti Rehu Besetin of the Kinafecha Leolamim, Utsror, Bitzorachim et Nishmoto, Adonai Nachaloto, Vionuach, Vishaloma Mishkavo, Benomar, Amen. The Mourner's Kaddish in the brochure. On the last page. Yitgadal, the Yitkadash, Shnei Rabo, the Olimo, the Virachirute, the Amlich Malchute, the Chaye Chon, the Yome Chon, the Chaye, the Chol Beit Yisrael, Vagolo, Bizman, Korib, Yimeru, Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabo, Mivorach, Yolam, Ome Omayo, Yitvorach, Yishtabach, Yitvoar, Yitroman, Yitnaseh. V'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shemei d'kudisho b'richu, ve'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, v'amiran b'olamo v'yimeru amen. Yehei shalom rabo min shemayo, v'chayim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru amen. Oseh shalom v'imromav, u'ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru amen. May the memory of Moshe ben Avraham Velino, Marvin Miller, whom we loved in life and still love in death, continue to bless our thoughts and our actions, still influencing us through our memories of acts of goodness that he performed. May the special grace of his years reach out to touch our hearts and give us hope. We regard his life as a special link in the chain of vital existence. We will honor him always with the gift of remembrance, and may the beauty of his life abide among us as a loving inspiration. And let us all say, Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the service. For those of you who wish to participate in the burial, you can come forward, place 3 measures of earth into the grave. Shiva will be continued at the North Shore Place at 1000 Sunset Ridge Road in Northbrook. We'll be together at 7 p.m. We'll be at Mincha Minyan at 5 p.m. Memorial contributions to the Laura Miller Memorial Fund would be appreciated. For those of you who are present at the cemetery, that information is on the service folder. For those of you who are joining us online, all that information will be found on our website. At this time, we are going to turn off the live stream. And for those of you who wish to place earth, please be extremely careful and take advantage of the gentleman with the umbrellas.